It's not to... All I'm asking for you, okay...
Good evening, I'm Kate Hawkesby.
And I'm Eric Young. Tonight, a top mountain guide who led the Prime Minister across the Southern Alps dies on Mount Cook.
We are no longer the cheapest producer of milk in the world, and that's got our dairy industry worried.
The women keep chasing Prince Charles. Today, it was proposals of marriage.
And what exactly did go on at Neverland? The brother of Michael Jackson's accuser gives his testimony. One of New Zealand's top guides has been dragged to her death along with 2 foreign tourists after a morning climb on the Aoraki Mount Cook National Park went horribly wrong. The trio was roped together when one of the tourists slipped and the others tumbled with him hundreds of metres over an ice cliff.
Ball Pass in the Aoraki Mount Cook National Park looks daunting, but in the mountain climbing world it's considered reasonably easy terrain. But this morning the pass proved fatal for one of New Zealand's top guides, 41-year-old Erica Boysenberg, and 2 male tourists, a 59-year-old man from England and a 29-year-old Japanese man.
What we're assuming is that they were short roped for travel, which is standard practice, and one slipped.
And then, but unfortunately pulled the other 2 down, and then the 3 have tumbled approximately 200 metres down an ice face.
3 were found dead when search and rescue arrived. Erica Boysenberg was known as one of the best alpine guides in the country. The Prime Minister's one of her former clients.
She was a tremendously adventurous woman. I would say one of New Zealand's leading woman guides. She has scaled some of the most difficult peaks in the world, like Fitzroy in Argentina, and it's a terrible tragedy and loss to see her go down on the Ball Pass in New Zealand.
These latest deaths take the Ball Pass toll up to 7 since 1975. Ms. Boysenberg's employer of 16 years says it's tragic such an experienced climber died here.
They always come back and say, well, what a wonderful lady. And I've personally been very close to her, obviously through the work and through the private climbing, and not only was a very good guide, but a very good friend.
The 5 survivors of the group were airlifted off the mountain, but bad weather in the ranges means the bodies of the 3 dead climbers may not be retrieved until later in the week. Pippa Wetzel, One News.
New Zealand's biggest export earners are being warned they're losing their competitive edge. Our dairy farmers are no longer the cheapest producers of milk in the world, and the high dollar is only making the situation worse.
When it comes to turning grass cheaply and efficiently into milk, New Zealand's been head of the herd for decades. But we've lost that mantle to South America, prompting a high-level appeal to Taranaki farmers.
If you look at New Zealand as a car, then the engine's the dairy industry. And if you look at the engine, I think we've been pulling the spark plug leads off for quite a while, actually.
New Zealand has slipped to 3rd cheapest milk producer in the world, nearly twice as expensive as Chile and Argentina. Our export competitor Australia is gaining on us as well.
We can see our costs are starting to get rather high in the industry as farmers, and our returns aren't really coming to us at the end of the day.
Chile's not a big milk producer yet, but that's changing. Labour is cheaper there, its soils are fertile, and its farmers use our technology. Andy West says we need to develop more high-value milk products, but that needs research, and farmers should contribute.
Their investment is not high right now. It's less than 1/5 of 1% of total dairy receipts. They need to spend more.
Fonterra already spends nearly $10 million a year on research and development.
And I think the farmers do need to contribute to that as well. But we also like to see something come more from the government too.
But spending more may not be easy. Next year, farmers' incomes will be squeezed by a higher New Zealand dollar. This year, their returns have been safeguarded by hedging. But next year, Fonterra will have to hedge at a higher exchange rate. Andrew Cogan, One News.
Residents living near a New Plymouth chemical factory say an official inquiry which looked at possible chemical poisoning doesn't go far enough. A report into the dioxin levels among Paratutu residents is due to be released tomorrow, but locals say the study's sample was too small and they want blood tests made available to everyone.
Like my children, to actually be checked up. I mean, I've got a daughter that's allergic to 43 different things.
An interim report found 24 locals have high dioxin levels in their blood. Dioxins were a byproduct of a herbicide made at the former Ivan Watkins Dow plant until the late 80s.
Residents on Queensland's Cape York Peninsula are preparing for the worst as they wait for a powerful cyclone. Cyclone Ingrid is now just 75 kilometres off the coast and is packing winds of up to 250 kilometres an hour. Although it's weakened slightly, it's still as powerful as Cyclone Tracy, which flattened Darwin in 1974. Well, One News reporter Andrew Potter joins us now from Cooktown. Andrew, what is the latest?
Well, Eric, since we've been here in Cooktown, the rain's been intensifying and the winds are certainly picking up. Now, residents in this area say that they have many of these cyclone warnings a year, but this one they're taking particularly seriously. Now, if you go down Cooktown's main street here, most of the windows are taped up with protective tape to stop them breaking should those high winds come in, and anything that could be blown away has been either stored or tied down. Now, for this area in particular, there's a strong evacuation plan in place for Cooktown and the surrounding regions, 10,000 residents, and people really tonight are just lying low, waiting for this thing to hit.
When is the worst of it expected then, Andrew?
Eric, probably just after sunrise tomorrow, and Ingrid is expected to come ashore along with a king tide. Now, the high tide, just after 6 a.m. Local time here tomorrow, is expected to be 3 metres higher than normal, and that could send water as many as a couple of kilometres inland. Now, also, meteorologists haven't ruled out the fact that Ingrid could intensify as she comes ashore and return to a Category 5 cyclone, bringing winds well in excess of 250 kilometres an hour. Now, we're in Cooktown, but the worst affected area is expected to be a couple of hundred kilometres to the north in a place called Cohen. There's 300 residents there, and they've been warned, and they're really battening down the hatches tonight to see what might come. Also, just out at sea there's about 150 vessels been estimated out at sea there, many of them prawn trawlers. 50 vessels have gone into ports to tie up and really try and avoid this. And it should be remembered that the area that Ingrid's coming ashore is where the worst ever cyclone in Australian history took place about a century ago. In that time, 400 people were killed.
Thank you, Andrew Potter, and we'll bring you further updates on breakfast and tomorrow evening's news hour.
Ex-leader Rodney Hyde has been accused of backing an immigrant who came to New Zealand and allegedly set up shop selling porn. The claims have been made in Parliament by Winston Peters, who also says the man has links to the Man-Boy Love Association.
American immigrant Jim Perron is openly gay, appearing here as a guest on Queer Nation. But in Parliament today, he wasn't a guest, but a target.
Minister, what investigations did the New Zealand Immigration Service undertake when allowing the residency approval of a Mr. Jim Perron, who set up an Auckland pawn shop under the guise of a bookshop? And did the investigations reveal his links with the North American Man-Boy Love Association, known as NAMBLA?
But it soon became clear Winston Peters wasn't interested in grilling the immigration minister.
Why would New Zealand, a supposedly first world country, allow this man to run a bookshop and pornography outlet in Auckland, notwithstanding that this paedophile sponsorship form was endorsed by a member of this Parliament?
Just so there's no doubt, I think the member is referring to me.
Rodney Hyde says he wrote to the Immigration Service asking it to hurry up Mr. Perron's application, but he did not endorse it. The ACT leader says he then got to know him and counts him as a friend. Jim Perron now manages this Auckland store, which he says is a bookshop, not a pawn shop.
Jim Perron has turned up to the National Party conference and sold books. He's turned up to the ACT Party conference and sold books. He is an upright New Zealand man here, and the idea that you try and score some cheap political points attacking someone simply because they're gay, I consider to be an outrage.
In an email to One News, Jim Perron says he has no links to the Man-Boy Love Association. He simply owned a bookstore many years ago where its magazine was on sale. He says it's absurd to believe that he would endorse the views of every publication sold, and he's accused Mr. Peters of trying to destroy his life for political gain. Guy and Espiner, One News.
Police hunting for 3 men who kidnapped 42-year-old Jing Shao now also want to talk to a young Asian woman who tried to use Mrs. Zhao's ATM card. These images show the woman in a Pakuranga mall around the time she tried to use the card, not long after the 42-year-old victim was freed.
They extorted the number out of Kelly and they used the card 5 times in a 5-minute period,
clearly they're quite greedy people who go to great lengths to get their hands on these people's cash.
The woman was unable to take out any money as police had closed down Mrs. Zhao's accounts.
Dozens of royal fans have been out in Auckland tonight to catch a glimpse of the future king. Prince Charles flew into the city this morning and tonight caught up with the country's most famous adventurer.
It was a meeting where both men seemed to be honoured to be in each other's company. This civic function, a chance for the future king to meet the king of the mountain. It was a more formal affair earlier in the day as Prince Charles flew into Whenuapai Air Base. The royals' arrival prompting an impressive turnout. A luncheon in honour of the New Zealand branch of the Prince of Wales Trust, a chance for a royal thumbs up.
Are you having a good time, Your Highness?
Inside, the Prince keen to raise nearly $2 million for the charity.
If some of you ever felt like being an angel to some of these young people, as it were, then I promise you that that particular contribution can go a very long way. And I think you'll find it would give you an enormous amount of satisfaction.
Satisfied too, a small group at Auckland Museum, the Prince accepting a traditional Maori chieftain's cloak and taking up tips on the finer points of weaving. With a little encouragement, he opted to complete his ensemble, but he'd only go so far.
And you have to poke your tongue out. It's all part of it. It's not painful.
How do you do that on Sunday?
No chance of seeseeing that. The Prince's whirlwind tour here ends tomorrow. His humour still intact.
How are you?
Ben Tornquist, One News.
Just ahead, 500,000 protesters choked the streets of Beirut denouncing US demands.
A key witness in the Michael Jackson trial describes what he says life was like in Neverland.
And we'll tell you why our women's golf team is celebrating.
Tomorrow on Headliners, we meet Sane Sangala, aka Day Hamo, on the eve of his album release.
And a very special treat, the amazing Sarah McLachlan in rehearsal for her Kiwi days. So join us at 5:30.